let's get into some happy thoughts. If you're a Cleveland Browns fan, I've got a niece, Miles, who's a huge Cleveland Browns fan, and she is on pins and needles over the possibility that J.J. Watt could join the Cleveland Browns. The news came today from Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland Plain Dealer that Watt is seriously considering the Browns. Now, my first thought when I saw that is that's JJ's way of getting some of the teams he's truly interested in to step up by saying, I'm about to sign with one of them. If one of you who really are on my list of teams really want to get this done, don't wait for the salary cap to be set. Let's go ahead and do this. But the Browns have that luxury because they have so much cap space. They could do this. They could do it without waiting for the cap to be set, Miles. And maybe if Watt wants some certainty, he decides not to wait until March 17, decides to pull the trigger now. If no one else wants to step up, join a team that's on the rise, join a team that's in his brother's division, both brothers, Derek and TJ, playing for the Steelers. I'd be fascinated by the possibility of J.J. Watt on the Browns, especially when he's got two brothers on the Steelers.
Yes, and you know what? I'll tell you what, Mike, and the reason I've got the Browns helmet behind me is because I'm a Cleveland native, but all this makes me think is, well, maybe the Browns isn't the Browns anymore, Juju Smith-Schuster, because when you have somebody like J.J. Watt who is, seriously considering signing with the Browns, this is actually something, and oh my gosh, look at that. Look at that 99. Oh, my goodness, in orange and brown and white. Look, it's not something that you would ever expect for the Browns that somebody of J.J. Watt's caliber could seriously consider going to Cleveland and that it actually could be taken seriously. Because in years past, if some free agent wanted to say, oh, yeah, I'm seriously considering going to Cleveland, the rest of the league would be like, all right, well, enjoy football Siberia. That's not what this is anymore. So if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and if that's where J.J. Watt really wants to go, then yes, signing with Cleveland is an actual threat because it says to Pittsburgh, not only am I not going to sign with you, but I'm going to sign with somebody in your division. So if you actually want me, you better step it up right now.
It reminds me in a weird sort of way, and this actually may have happened before you were even born. This is going to be very depressing when I figure out this timeline, Miles. But it reminds me of Reggie White going to Green Bay to a lesser extent because J.J. Watt is not in his prime. J.J. Watt is not the player Reggie White was. That's not a slight. Not many guys are or ever will be the player that Reggie White was. But when Reggie White picked the Green Bay Packers, that gave the Packers a far different feel. And they were a team that had been in the wilderness in the 20 years after Vince Lombardi. They started in the late 80s to be relevant again with Don Mikowski, and they were just moving toward being a team that should be reckoned with. And then Reggie White shows up, and the perception changed. The reality changed. Again, Watt's not going to have the same impact on the Browns that White would have on the Packers. But from the standpoint of the Browns actually being a serious player for J.J. Watt, it feels a little like Green Bay Packers Reggie White light. Now, please tell me that you were alive when Reggie White signed with the Green Bay Packers.
Okay, as you're saying that, I did look it up, and I was alive, but do I remember this? Absolutely not, because I was about 1.5 years old. So I was little baby me, going to Browns games and sitting in the dog pound with my mom and eating dog biscuits. But I think what you're saying is really interesting here, because if the Browns can get somebody of a J.J. Watt caliber and then they pair him opposite somebody like a Myles Garrett, then I think you're right, Mike. It really does elevate what this Browns defense can be. It elevates what the perception of the Browns defense can be around the league as well. Because even though they won a playoff game, I don't think anybody really thinks that the Browns had an elite defense last year, and especially when Denzel Ward was out for them or when Myles Garrett had to go out for a couple games with COVID. That defense just wasn't elite. So they need more pieces because they can be a really good unit. But if you have more guys like that, Mike, then I really think that they can take that next step and not just win one playoff game, but maybe win multiple playoff games.
Let's take a look at the Browns defenders who had multiple sacks in 2020 to give us an idea of where J.J. Watt may fit in with that team. Obviously, Myles Garrett is the man. He had 12. Olivier Vernon due to become a free agent with 9. Sheldon Richardson, 4.5. Adrian Claiborne, 3.5. Larry Ogunjobi, 2.5. Ogunjobi had his moments for the team. But more so, obviously, Myles Garrett, the guy, the man, the player around whom that defense is built. And when you have someone like that who demands extra attention, who's going to ultimately be the one you game plan to stop, it creates an opening for J.J. Watt to be, the guy that has an easier path to the quarterback. And I also think the more pass rushers you have, the greater chance you have, frankly, to rotate in a healthy J.J. Watt and keep him off the field more frequently so you don't need him to go 100% of the snaps a game, because we know it's a rough and tumble sport. Guys get injured, especially in the trenches like that. And I said this today. I've got complete admiration for a player who knows full well when he gets his body to 100%, he's going to go out on that field and something's going to break, something's going to snap, something's going to tear. He's going to have to go back, work to get back to 100%, and then go do it again. And it's this lather, rinse, repeat that becomes a guy's career. Pain, surgery, rehab, waiting, frustration, and just to go do it again and put yourself back at risk. And with a robust rotation, Myles, great opportunity for Watt to come out of a season without being as banged up as we've seen him in the past.
Yeah, and you know what this situation kind of reminds me of is what the Rams have done with guys with Aaron Donald. You pair somebody with Aaron Donald, and you know Aaron Donald is the one that's going to be drawing the most attention from opposing offenses. So then other guys like Leonard Floyd this past year, he had a great season there playing alongside Aaron Donald. Dante Fowler, he's played alongside Aaron Donald for about a season and a half, and he got to cash in with a pretty big payday there with the Atlanta Falcons. And now they may or may not be regretting that a little bit. Clay Matthews also signed with the Rams there in 2019 in order to have that sort of effect where it's like, all right, I can go there and I can be effective because teams aren't going to prepare for me like they're going to prepare for him. So I think if you're J.J. Watt and you know that you're also going to have Myles Garrett alongside you on that defensive line, that can present you a lot of opportunities for somebody who's getting a little bit older, but has still shown that he can be effective in the right spots. And I think you're especially right there, Mike, with if he's in a good rotation and he doesn't have to be out there all the time, that could really make him effective.
Last year, the Browns, one of the teams pursuing Jadeveon Clowney. They ultimately didn't get him. He had 0 sacks in 8 games for the Titans. Now, remember, he's one of the guys who, even if he doesn't have sacks, he is a significant contributor in the F up the play, or as Calais Campbell calls it, the FSU F stuff up stat. Calais Campbell, a master of that as well. So the lack of stats doesn't show how disruptive Clowney can be, but Watt can be Clowney, and Watt can get disruption, and Watt can get sacks, and Watt can be a force. And the other thing Watt can do, he's just going to generate excitement. It may generate too much excitement. You know, we saw the Browns, Myles, in 2019, the bar was too high, and they ran around under it all year long. In 2020, the bar was too low. They exceeded it. They got to the playoffs. They got to the final 8. Now what's going to happen this year, the bar is going to be too high again. And if they get J.J. Watt, it's going to go even higher, and they're going to have a hard time living up to the dramatically increased expectations this year if they would get J.J. Watt. Even if they don't, they're going to have a hard time. They get Watt, the expectations get even higher.
Yeah, they get higher, but I think if you're the Browns, that's what you want. You want to be able to say, can I live up to the high expectations? And frankly, I think their leadership right now is in a much better position than it ever was in 2019 when they had Freddie Kitchens, who had ascended from running backs coach to offensive coordinator to head coach in a way that probably was too quick for everybody involved. And so I think with Kevin Stefanski, who showed that he's a really good head coach, coach of the year, I mean, they won a playoff game even though he was out with COVID. And I think that speaks to just how effective he's been as a leader in setting his team up for success. Andrew Berry, I think, has done a really good job as the general manager for that team as well over the last year. So I think that they're set up to handle success, Mike, a lot better than they were in 2019 now for 2021.
We mentioned Jadeveon Clowney going to the Titans last year. It reunited him with former Texans defensive coordinator Mike Vrabel, who's now the head coach of the Titans. J.J. Watt, that same connection, that same link, that same possibility that he goes to the team that used to be the Houston Oilers and is now the Tennessee Titans. John Robinson, GM of the team, met with reporters earlier today, Here's Robinson acknowledging that there's been some discussion with J.J. Watt's camp.
We've had some contact. It's early in the stages. I think he's having. We obviously know his skill set and what he's meant to the Texans. Having played against him twice, the type of player he is. So we'll just kind of see how it goes. Like a lot of these guys that that are coming available over the next few weeks. See kind of where their interest is, and then make a determination if it's an avenue that hey, we want to go down, and are we a fit potentially for some of these guys that become available.
Plenty of words ultimately saying nothing. And he's either keeping his cards close to the vest or he's not really interested. He's just being polite because he may have to play him again. Why say something gratuitous that would upset him? Like, hey, he's too old. We don't really want him. He really doesn't fit. He really isn't all that good. I didn't get the impression that they're serious unless they're being very, very careful not to drive up the market and not to force the issue prematurely and have him maybe sign with someone else who's got more money. And again, knowing what you will have under the cap is such a critical part of this. Even if you have cap space, you need to know what the cap's going to be because you're going to have a budget. You're going to have an idea of how much money you assign to this position, that position, that position. And if you start spending more than you want to, more than you should on a spot that J.J. Watt would fill on the roster, it's going to make it harder for you to otherwise build out the team. So, this comes down to how patient J.J. Watt's willing to be. He's seriously considering the Browns because maybe the Browns are the only team that's seriously making offers at this point. There isn't the land rush because of the salary cap issues. I just would be surprised and amazed if he ends up in Cleveland. I would be less surprised if he ends up with the Titans. Both teams, potential contenders. The hard part about this, Myles, is it's impossible to know with any real certainty that team you're signing up for has a clear shot at the Super Bowl. Too many issues, too many factors, too many variables go into a team's season. All you can hope to sign with is a team that's north of the basic line of contention.
Yeah, and I think at least with these two teams that we're talking about right now, with Cleveland and with Tennessee, I think that they're both above that sort of line. And I think that's why, at least at this point, J.J. Watt can say, hey, I'm seriously considering signing with Cleveland, and people can take it seriously, as we were sort of discussing earlier. But I think the interesting thing about the Titans is that they need somebody to come in and help that defense. I mean, this was not one of the good defenses in the league, across the league. They were the worst defense on third down. They allowed about 52% of third down conversions to be completed. That's not something that you can sustain, I think, as a playoff contender and somebody that actually really wants to take it to the Super Bowl. And if you just continue to allow teams to stay on the field and stay on the field, that's going to prevent you from doing the things you want to do offensively as well. So the Titans really probably could use somebody like J.J. Watt to help improve that defensive unit. But I think, like you said, there was a lot of just, we might be interested and we've had discussions, but it could happen, it could not happen, it depends. If they were really that interested, I don't know if John Robinson would have been able to contain himself more than he did. You know what I'm saying? It didn't seem like it was all that serious.
Well, he's going to land somewhere. We know that. There will be a market. It's not the kind of crazy land rush it would have been if he'd been available 5 years ago. But this guy's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He's got gas in the tank, and he brings leadership. He brings credibility. He's going to sell 99 jerseys as long as he goes to a team that doesn't have a guy who wears 99 or hasn't retired 99. And J.J. Watt is going to be a force in 2021.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.